G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it.
Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Jacine Greenwood, who is CEO and founder of Roccoco Botanicals based in Queensland, Australia. So thanks for your time, Jacine.
Thank you so much, Mick, for inviting me on the show.
Now, it's good to spare some time, because it's always good to listen to business owners like yourself. And I read about your business in Smart Company last year, which is a great resource for business owners, and read a little bit about your story and thought you'd be great for our podcast. So it's good to have you aboard. So I guess to kick off, tell us a little bit about your background and your business.
So I never really saw myself as an entrepreneur when I started my journey, to be honest. I call myself an accidental entrepreneur. I just got really frustrated with my skin and not being able to find anything for it. So originally when I started first as I did nursing, and then I fell into beauty therapy. And then I started doing postgraduate courses in skin. And for a long time, I thought, you can't do this. And so for 6 months, I toyed with the idea of actually starting a brand. I had no clue where to start, and I'd never done a formula in my life. So I started, and, I think it took me 52 times to get the first cleanser right and about 26 to get the first moisturizer, very, very trial and error. And so I started on this journey, and then I eventually became a cosmetic chemist to get the piece of paper. But when I first just started, I think my interest was my own skin. And then I just went, God, my kids are going to have the same as me. And I didn't want them to go through the same. But also, too, I had other girlfriends that were having the same issues. So that's sort of what led me to start. It was probably more a humanitarian thing. It was never about money. It was always about having options for people, because I believe that everyone should be able to feel beautiful in their own skin. And unfortunately, the way that the cosmetics are made at the moment, that's actually not possible, because they will end up causing issues for people who are acne prone or potentially sensitive. Yeah. So it's been an 11-year journey, and there's certainly been some peaks and troughs along the way, and I've loved every moment of it. But it's funny, like I never started out or thought of myself as an entrepreneur, which just goes to show really anyone can do it if they really have a love and a passion for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's probably not uncommon, because you're doing what, either it's around a purpose or a passion or something you believe in, and you just sort of it just sort of starts, and next thing you know, you're in business and growing a lot of the time, right? So that's great. Where did the name come from?
So the name Roccoco, it's actually a French style of architecture, and I've always had a love affair with Paris. Apparently my name is French, much to my grandmother's, I suppose, horror. She thought she'd made up my name because I was meant to be St. Peter, so I got Jacine Katrina instead. And ironically, my daughter's name, Corinne, is also French. So I just really loved it. It reminded me a little bit of Coco Chanel, so the Coco. And I thought, Roccoco, how great is that? So we decided to go for it, and it did help that the domain names were available as well as the social handles, because for anyone starting a brand, it's really, that's your biggest challenge now, is so many domains are brought up. Trying to find a domain name that hasn't been taken by someone who's just sitting on it, it's almost an impossible task. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's got a ring about it, that's for sure. So that's fascinating. And so you started in 2011. So how old were you when you started out?
So I was, I've got to think, 2011, 41. So I'd literally just got divorced.
Right.
So I just got divorced. I got divorced just before my 40th birthday, and we registered the company in 2011. We didn't actually start trading until 2013. And so the journey initially was quite was not a quick journey. So I originally, when I first started with it, because this was my second brand, my first brand, Eclogite, failed. It only got up to $80,000 revenue. And, some people may say, oh, that was great, but there was zero profit. So to me, it was a flop. I started going out and cold calling to get in to see clinics. And I would be driving every second week. I didn't have my children because of the custody arrangements, going out and seeing people. And then I'd come back in 2 weeks' time and they hadn't even opened my products. And I thought, well, this isn't working. So then I actually found LinkedIn groups and I started participating in LinkedIn groups, actually. And I got really well known for acne and for my expertise. And so from there, we then moved to Facebook groups when they opened up. And we literally from that broke the American market. I started a group called Educated Therapists. I invited people into it who are in the skin industry. I started teaching in there. And from there, I positioned myself as an expert, which is where I've had a huge advantage with my brand. It wasn't like it was nobody that brought a brand out. When I say nobody, someone who's not well known. And so I got really well respected in the industry to the point that people in Australia thought I lived in the US because most people on my page were US based. And they're like, oh, you're in America. I'm like, no, I'm like 30 minutes down the road from you. You're on the Gold Coast. I'm on the Gold Coast. And so, yeah, it just grew exponentially from there. I got really well known for acne and cosmetic raw materials, and I'm a bit of a geek. So up until I met my husband 7 years ago, all I did for 17 years was read journal studies. You ask my children what their memories of them was, it was me reading the journal paper. And so for me, I got really good at understanding skin and what makes things work. And that's what has made me a really good chemist. So it's just grown exponentially from there. Like up until, I think we did our first ad, it would have been in September 22. So we grew organically for nearly 9 years, word of mouth. We grew into New Zealand, we grew into the USA, and we've grown across Australia. And I did my first ad then, and then we stopped that for a while again because they weren't working, and we're advertising again now. But again, I've already got people in Canada who want my product purely through my reputation. So when we launch there in June, I already know I'll have accounts on board, which is a huge testimony. And it's a big part of building a business. I think one of the big mistakes business owners make is they hide behind their business name. And so it doesn't matter what industry you're in, you have to have a personal brand as well. And so I've been really good at developing my personal brand. People know who I am and, they know Roccoco, but they know me as well. Whereas other times if you said a business name and you said, well, who's the founder? People don't know who they are. So I think having that visible presence, because, as with any business, the aim would be eventually to exit. And, you should have an exit strategy of some sort. And if you exit, then if you don't have a personal brand, how do they know who you are when you start your next venture to garnish attention? So for me, it wasn't something I intentionally did. It was just something that happened, but I see the value of it because every person that I know that's got a personal brand and a business brand, their business is actually quite large and it's grown quite exponentially. Yeah.
Well, no, thanks for sharing that. That's a real gold nugget coming out of this conversation, because I think too many business owners overlook their personal brand and then how you position it, right? So what you've done is testament to how important and the impact it can make. So, well done. Can you share some key numbers just to illustrate the growth of the business, say around sales or full-time equivalent employees?
Yeah, so at the moment we've got about 20 full-time employees. We're just sitting under, it was 6 million last year. This year will be interesting because we've literally just aligned with another business in the USA, and I've got contracts coming left, right, and center. So I know my growth this year, I will become in the 2% of business owners that do over $10 million by the time this year is out. It's interesting, the statistics, 95% of businesses never hit $1 million. So anyone who does is a unicorn. And most businesses for a start don't pass 10 years. We've been going for technically 11, 13 if you when I traded. And only 2% of businesses ever hit past $10 million. So I know by the end of this year that we will, because of the deals and stuff that are coming together. which will be phenomenal. Yeah, so it's been rapid growth for about 5 years. In 2019 was when we had our biggest year of growth. We grew nearly 270%. So we went from about 600,000 to 1.6 million in the year. And I still remember at the time people saying to me, you won't be able to do this if you don't have this in place. And I just looked at them and went, okay. And I didn't put any of that stuff in place, and I still did it.
Yeah.
So I'm a firm believer in that. I don't focus so much on how I'm getting there, which will probably sound really odd. I focus on the goal. And generally, I look at that goal every day. And generally what will happen is things will come into my path and I go, oh, that's a really good idea. I'm going to follow that. And you just, like, I could never have orchestrated in my wildest dreams how my business has come about. Like, I would think of all the logical things to do, but there's always things that come in that you think, wow, if I hadn't have done that, this wouldn't have led to this connection, or this wouldn't have led to this contact. So yeah, definitely like working on it daily, having a look at where I want to go, but I never get fixated on the route. And I think that's a challenge for many business owners. You get fixated on it has to be a certain way. And I'm always open to that. Like, I don't care how I get to my goal, as long as I get to my goal and it's ethical. As long as it's ethical and moral, I'm good with it. It just sometimes comes in ways we don't anticipate, is what I will say. You know, like our next massive leap is because we're forming an alliance with another company. Now, never in a million years would I have ever orchestrated that in my wildest dreams. It's just something that came together. Same with our Indigenous line, you know, like that's coming out in June. I never planned on doing an Indigenous line. It just sort of happened. Just like me breaking the American market, I just followed my nose. And I find that when you're super passionate about something, it's funny how it's almost magnetic to other people. Like when someone's really genuinely enthused, they actually attract other people to them. And I find that's almost like a secret of success, because if you really love what you do, you know, then you're not working. And I know for me, if I won Lotto tomorrow, I'd still be here.
Yeah.
I would be still doing what I'm doing. I wouldn't change anything. I might have a slightly nicer house and get the kids a house so that they're not at home. So, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely get the sense it's that passion that flows through. And
yeah.
But I guess going back to your point, you're sort of very much goal orientated, and I guess that's your sort of North Star, so to speak. So I guess the things that you do, you may not be planning to do, but they're still trying to achieve your goal, whatever that is, and no doubt they change from time to time. But I think that does give you focus by the sound of it. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. Like for me, I sit there and go, if you don't program your brain on where you want it to focus, it doesn't know what to focus on. And you know, like I say this to some of my clinic owners: if you haven't set a goal, and it's not just a random goal, I said you need to know why you want to hit that goal. What's the purpose of that goal? What are you going to do when you hit that goal? You need to have some emotional attachment to it, because if you just set a random goal that means nothing to you, you're never going to hit it. And so you have to have meaning for it. So when we went from the 600 to the 1.6 million, my goal was to hit 1.5. And I remember coming into my team and saying to them, we're going to hit 1.5 million in the next 12 months, because, you know, I'd found out about this grant called the Entrepreneurs Grant, and I wanted this grant. And in order to get it, I needed $1.5 million. And so I announced to the team what we were doing. And at the time, my team was only 5 staff. And I said, we're going to hit 1.5 million. And they looked at me and they said, how are you going to do that? I said, I have absolutely no idea, but we're doing it. And so we just got really active. And one of the things that, I don't know why it still amazes me, everyone says it's luck, but I find the more action I take, the more I put myself out there, the more luck I get. So I just got really, really busy. I was doing webinars, I was promoting, and we just grew. And so from that, we hit our goal. And like, I didn't know what was going to do it. I just went, okay, let's just do what seems inspired to do, but you have to take some action, because zero action will not get you to your goals.
Exactly.
And one thing I'm big on is massive action. I'm not a procrastinator. So I never put off for tomorrow what I can possibly do today, because tomorrow will have its next set of challenges. As any business owners knows, like if you're lucky to have 50 good days in business, you're doing well.
Absolutely.
But you don't have a fire to put out, because most days there's a fire to put out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another great little tip. Just it's all about action, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, when was the moment you felt like you'd succeeded?
I still feel like this will sound really odd, even though we're, heading towards 10 million this year. I still feel like we've barely scratched the surface. Like, I think when we moved into this big premise here, like about 15 months ago, that was like a pinnacle moment for us. Like, we had been rapid growth for 5 or 6 years, and we had got to a point where we were outgrowing warehouses continuously. And so we had one warehouse in Beanley and one warehouse here. And when we originally looked at this warehouse, like, my husband, like, he was just like, this is so expensive. How are we going to do this? And I said, I don't know, but we're going to make it work. And I think that's, again, this is a mindset thing. Like, I always work it out. And so when we moved in here, because the warehouse is 3,500 square feet, so it's a large premise, and there was tons of desks. And I thought when we moved in here, I thought we are never going to fill this. Well, yeah, we've done a pretty good job of it. And so for me, I think moving in here, that was that moment where I went, I feel like a real business.
Yep.
And, like, because we'd been in much smaller premises before, and we had a boardroom. I was like, I never had a boardroom. I know that sounds corny, but oh my God, we've got a boardroom. We've actually got somewhere to take our suppliers rather than, oh, come and sit by my desk. And so I think, moving in about 15 months ago was the moment when I went, okay, you've actually somewhat made it now. But I still don't, I don't look at it and go, I don't know, what does success mean to me? I mean, it's helping people, but I still feel like we've not even scratched where we're going yet. I feel like we've just got so much more potential.
Yeah, that's great. And actually, that's my next question. What does success look like to you? So I think you've sort of partly answered that.
Yeah. I think success is definitely, for me, it's loving what you do and feeling fulfilled with it. But it's also about being in a position where you can also potentially give back. To me, that's success. And
I think that the concept of reciprocity plays out when you have that mindset as well. That's awesome. So what's the one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
Honestly, the best skill any business owner can learn is copywriting. Like, it is one of the things that I learned 17 years ago. And whilst I know many business owners don't like doing marketing and they want to outsource it, unless you've got an amazing person who totally gets your brand, totally gets your business, and is an exceptional copywriter, you're going to struggle. And the reason why I say that is because I've had multiple people who have attempted to market our business and it's never worked. So we ended up taking back the marketing ourselves for our ads and things, and we are getting far better return on ad spend than any other digital agency that we've ever used. But for me, it's also too, nobody knows your product or your brand like you do. And so when you're outsourcing it, one, they don't have your passion, but they don't have your knowledge or all the little nuances about your brand or your product or your business. And so I think it's better for you to do that. We actually started with us. I started writing because we're product-based. You could do a similar thing for service. My team, because I'm not very good with details and more visionary, gave me a 17-page PDF that I had to fill out on every single product we launched about what was in it, what the key ingredients were, what the benefits were. I had to do blog posts. I had to do social media intros. And I give that to my team now because my team are not copywriters and they utilize that. And now if we do outsource to a third party, like we've just got some people that we've brought on for email, we can share that with them with that document that has literally the essence of the product. They can get some of the wording of how I speak as well, because tonality is really important as well. But yeah, probably the best thing would be to learn copywriting and to learn how to sell, because again, I think a lot of business owners are accidental business owners. I don't know if you've ever read the book The E-Myth by Michael Gerber.
Absolutely.
It's a brilliant book. And like when I first started, I would have considered myself a technician who went into business. And that's like my first brand failed. And I went, why am I no good at this? I'm like, I'm a great beauty therapist. Why am I sucking at this? And that's when I realized I knew nothing about business. I knew nothing about break-evens. I knew nothing about budgets. And so even though they're not particularly sexy, they're a part of business. And so I would say, yeah, learn marketing and learn to know your numbers, because without your numbers, you are flying blind and you don't know how your business is going. And if you don't know your numbers, then how do you measure anything?
Yeah, exactly. Some another two good tips there. Thanks, Jacine. And I think on a marketing perspective, it is, I totally agree with you. You need to have a really good handle on it, at least to start with, because no one does it like yourself, and no one knows your product and your business like yourself. So, and we've just released an ebook for business owners to give them a good starting point around some concepts and data and aspects for marketing. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah.
So with your business and your growth, how have you funded it from day one, and what sort of sources of funding have you used?
Okay, so initially my big 120,000 from my divorce was my funding money. And my mother said I was crazy because I sunk everything into the business. She says you should keep some. And I tend to be an all or nothing girl.
Mm-hmm.
So I sunk all of it in there. And she goes, what are you going to do if you fail? And I'm just like, well, it's a good motivation for me not to.
Mm.
So I had no choice but to make it work, because I had everything to lose if I did not. And so initially it was self-funded, and I literally, for the first probably 3 years of the business, I lived like a pauper. I literally put everything back into the business. I did not do anything flash. I had, clinic owners going, God, that's a bit of a dodgy hotel. I can't believe she's staying there. And I'm like, it's all because I wanted to reinvest the money back into the business. And it was only about 3 years ago, actually, that I even got accounts with my suppliers. And like I'd been going, like we were multi-million by that point. And they were like, I'm like, oh, maybe I should get an account, because, with packaging supplies, it takes 6 months to come. And they're like, oh, who are your references? And I said, what do you mean? And they're like, oh, for your accounts. And then they came back to me and they said, you don't have any accounts with these people. I said, no, I pay cash. And they just went, what? I said, doesn't everyone? And they went, no. So we only had accounts 3 years ago. Initially, when we needed, like the first time I actually took a loan out, which was through PayPal, actually, and because it was easy. That was my first one. That was for equipment. So I've always been quite strategic if I've taken a loan out.
Mm-hmm.
And that was because up until 2019, we were making products with a bar mix stick blender. And I went, if we ever want to scale this, we need to get some manufacturing equipment. And I just didn't want to outsource to anyone because we'd been doing it the whole time. So we got a PayPal loan to buy our first 100-kilo homogenizer and a sheet mask folder and filler. And so we got a loan, I think it was for about 100K or whatever. We bought them, and they just took a percentage of our revenue and paid it back. And we paid it back in record time. And then every time I've wanted to do an expansion, I've either gone back to PayPal or now Shopify have funding. And it was only probably 18 months, 2 years ago, that we actually got an overdraft on our CBA account. Because I didn't know anything about business banking at that point. And it was when we actually won the AFR, we came in the Fast 100 list for 2021 for the Australian Financial Review. CBA reached out to us. And they went, God, this is one of our customers. And that's when we got in 21, that's when we got overdraft facility and a few other things put in that we had no clue about. But yeah, I've self-funded. And I mean, one of the things I would say to business owners and entrepreneurs is don't take your money out too early. Like a lot of people, when they start making money, they start living a high life and they don't reinvest back into the business. And like for me, you need capital for growth. If you take it out too early, you're actually going to stunt your growth. And so for me, even now, like I still only pay myself a really modest wage. Most CEOs are on, over 200K. I would rather see that extra 100K go back into the business for expansion and growth, because I know my time will come for the big payout. So we only pay ourselves 110, Mick. So, and that's not a huge wage. But I'd rather see my business grow and expand and get what we need to get to that next level, than take that money out and spend it. So I think that's probably, I don't know, I grew up with no money, so that's probably why. And I've also too, as we've grown, I've never really adapted my lifestyle to my income. So it's probably, I'm trying to think of the other entrepreneur that they still live in the same house that they bought 30 years ago. And, like we're the same. We could go and buy another house, but, that's not the smart thing to do. So I think it's about using what money you get wisely, reinvesting back into it. And because I know that Roccoco will end up being a global brand. Yep. And so for me, that's the direction and the destination I want it to go. So in order to do that, we need to make sure we've got money for it. But yeah.
No, that's great. And obviously with the end in mind, with your ultimate return on investment, you're sort of playing the long game, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. You mentioned Entrepreneurs Grant before, so you accessed that, which unfortunately ceased last year.
I know. I'm tragic about that. I was hoping my testimonial would get them to put it back up again.
Yeah. So I think there is a new one, but I think that's 50,000 with a dollar for dollar. But what about any other grants?
So when I first started, actually, I can't think of the name of the grant, but they had two smaller grants where the government actually paid half my chemistry course and my regulatory compliance course as well. And I actually said to them, Angus, which is from the program, I said to him, if you hadn't have, allowed me or funded me to do that, I wouldn't have had the money to do it. And since then, I went on in 2022 to become the first Australian company to win the LA Awards, which is for cosmetic innovation and ingenuity, which is a global award.
Wow, well done.
That was money well spent by the government. We then had the Entrepreneurs Grant, which allowed us to put in an ERP system at the time, which we've now upgraded from since then. But that just helped us to be able to scale better and to manage customer service better as well. We've had manufacturing grant, which we're just finalising as well. So we were one of the few people that got the manufacturing grant. We got about $50,000 from them for that. And again, that was for us to upskill our equipment here to be able to break into new markets and to be able to do things. So we utilise that grant for buying bigger equipment, but also equipment that would allow us to do extraction of essential oils and things, which is a collaboration with an Indigenous partnership, which will be phenomenal. So, yeah, I always have a look at what other grants there are out there. Like I haven't looked again recently, but I'm spewing that we could have got one for implementing NetSuite. And I'm like, if only I'd known. So it's probably a good idea to check them regularly. Yes. But yeah. And we've got the export grant as well. So the EDMG, the Export Development Market Grant, we've claimed that for 3 years in a row. And they've now changed the rules again where you can continue to claim it, because originally it was only 3 years. So we do claim that as well, the Export Development Grant.
Good. Yeah, that's one that's often overlooked when you're exporting. So
yeah,
sounds like you're all across it, but as you say, it's hard to keep up with the grants. Yeah. There's thousands of them, and actually, I'm having on the podcast a lady called Madonna Melrose, who's based in Victoria, and that's her business. So that's certainly a good resource potentially for business owners. So if you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
I would, because I love it. Like, honestly, I love cosmetics. Like, there are so many new developments that happen constantly, and I just think it's like the ultimate in creativity. So yeah, I'd definitely go into it again.
Yeah, no, good. I got the impression just your passion sort of flows out. So can you outline the most stressful point in your business journey growth so far?
Wow. I will have to say it was last year. There's been two pinnacle moments that was really stressful. The first one was in 2017. I had 3 spinal surgeries in a year, and I spent 9 months rehabilitation, and I was back at that office within 1 week dictating from the couch. So that was a really challenging year, but there was also, ironically, the year after that we had our biggest growth as well. And it would be last year. I had cervical fusion of C2 and C3 about 17 weeks ago. And that was around September last year. And my neck just literally imploded within 1 day. Like, I was fine, woke up, and then I'm like, I feel like my disc has just blown. So unlike any of the others, which was gradual, this was just like that. And I had, at the time, I had staff leaving before I went into surgery because I didn't like the changes with implementing NetSuite. And then I had one of my key team members at the time resign on me when I was in hospital. And I hadn't even had my surgery. And I was just like, of all the timing, it couldn't have been time for them to resign. So I had gone from 23 staff down to 12, and they all departed. All of the key people involved in implementing NetSuite left. So I literally was in hospital for 5 weeks. And I literally got out on the Friday, and I was at work on the Monday, 2 weeks post neck surgery.
You had no choice?
I had no choice. I was like, what do I do? So there were times where I thought I was going to throw up with the pain because I needed to rest. And we do have a couch here. So there were times where I just went, I'm not feeling well. And I was super grateful for my staff because they were all fussing over me going, are you okay? But it also showed me how resilient I am. And the more challenges and adversity I face, the stronger I become. And I think the next time you face any adversity, it's almost like, oh, okay, well, it's not that bad, And so, yeah, that's probably been the hardest thing that's ever happened. But it's also, as I always believe, there's always a silver lining to things. And as a consequence, we have had some really amazing key team members come in post this, because whilst you don't have a void in your company, you can't fill it. So people left, and then we had the replacements were just like another so much leveled up. It was like, wow, I feel like I've almost rubbed Midas at the moment. I'm like, what is happening? Because the team members that we managed to get were just phenomenal. So yeah, that definitely has been, I think, my pinnacle moment for the most stressful time in business.
Yes, no, I could only imagine what that was like. But as you say, there was a silver lining, and I guess, I guess at the time it wasn't, it was no very stressful. But I guess you look back on it, and it was actually a good thing ultimately. For the business. So, what area in business do you feel you had to work on the most to add the greatest value over the last 12 years?
I think for me, definitely, it's definitely been marketing. Like, for me, marketing has been the thing that has been a huge thing. I'm not a systems person. I'm not great at it. So I employ people to do that who love systems. That's not my strong suit, but we've definitely implemented more systems and structure as well, because it's very easy when you've only got 4 or 5 people, but when you start to get more people, you definitely need that structure and systems in there. So thankfully, I've had people who love the detail that I don't love. So I've been quite good in selecting people who will complement what I would call my weaknesses, because I know people sometimes say that you should focus on your weaknesses. To me, I focus on what I do best. And try to delegate that to other people that do. But yeah, definitely systems and processes, because that was a big problem for, I think, in marketing.
No, that's a good one. And systems and processes, yeah, that's the foundational thing to be able to grow, right, with consistency. But I think to your point, focusing on your weaknesses, I agree in that if it's something you don't like, then
Yeah.
you're better off getting someone who does like it and does it a lot better, right? So as you've done, so that's great. So what have you enjoyed the least about managing the fast growth?
The fast growth, probably, to be honest, hiring staff.
Tends to be a common response.
It's a rapid growth. It's a bit of a thrill, but it's also a bit of a tight edge as well. Like, there's been a couple of times where it's been a little bit hairy and I've gone, oh my God, have you made the right decision? Actually, I don't say that. I just go, my internal dialogue is, I will get through this. You will find a way. That's always what I tell myself. So my internal dialogue is really good. I'm always like, no matter what happens, you'll find a way to get around this. And it's usually my team. My team are funny. They don't actually now, when there's something go on, unless I'm stressed, they don't actually bother anymore with being stressed. They're like, when she's worried, I'll be worried. So, because I know I'm really good at getting around challenges. But yeah, it's been interesting with the journey and a thrill. But I don't know, the thing I don't like, definitely, I think it's team, because it's so hard to get good team members. Like finding the right people that fit with not just your culture, but who can do the job and who are also committed to our vision, because if they're not committed to our vision, they're not really going to work out here. So that's the thing I've probably least enjoyed, and learning about HR.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, fair comments. And what do you love most about growing the business?
Honestly, it's the thrill of the chase.
Yeah.
I just love the uncertainty, and I know that sounds crazy, but I love the fact that no day is ever the same. I love the fact that every day there'll be a challenge that I'm going to have to navigate, so it keeps me on my toes. And I also love the fact that you get to decide which direction you go. And I think for me, the personal growth and development that I've experienced myself, that's been the hugest thing. Like, I've become so much more than I ever thought I was ever possible. And to sit there and go, wow, what else can I do? What else can I achieve? Who else can I help as well? And who else can I uplift along the journey? Because, I love inspiring other people, because I think so many of us just don't go for things because we don't think we're capable of it. But yeah, definitely the personal growth is what I've loved, and the journey of taking that risk, and the uncertainty. My husband's polar opposite to me. He craves certainty, and I'm like, if I don't know where things are going, it makes my brain sharp. So that's how I sort of see it. I don't know if other people see it like that, but to me, it's exciting. Yeah.
Well, everyone's different, right? No doubt some interesting conversations around the kitchen table then.
Yeah.
So what's been your biggest mindset shift in your journey so far?
I'll be honest, like, before I entered the LA Awards, I had major imposter syndrome. And people had been telling me for years that I was ahead of my time. And I even I realized it was about 2019, that my formulas were a little bit different. And I would show suppliers my results, and they'd be visibly shocked. And I'd be like, doesn't everyone get results like these? And they're like, no. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I think because it's just come really easily to me, it's easy for me to formulate. I love formulating. And because I don't have to grind at it, I dismissed my talent with it because it was just easy. It's like anyone who does anything easily, we think, oh, we're not that good. And I think that was the big mindset shift for me when we actually got into the finals and we won in 2022 for our category. I was like, you are actually good at what you do, Jacine. And I think we grow up with that, like with our childhood, because, we've always been taught not to boast, not to put yourself out there, and so when, particularly like for women in business, like it's harder, like putting yourself out there, because as we start to rise, people will start to tear you down. And then because we generally want that friendship circle, it becomes harder and harder. But that definitely was, I think, one of the pinnacle moments, winning. And that recognition, and then to have 3 of our products in the finals for this year's awards, which are being announced on the 6th of March, was just like surreal. I just went, oh, it wasn't a fluke, Jacine, you did it again.
That's right. Yeah.
So, I think that was definitely like one of the big mindset shifts. But I've been working on my mindset for years. Like, I'm big into personal development because I truly believe that if you don't believe you can do something, you won't. And so I've been using hypnosis, rewiring my subconscious for years, because I know that the more I do that and the more I achieve, the easier it is to hit the next level. And I also know that the mindset that got me to where I am now is not going to get me to 100 million. I need to start changing what I'm doing and how I'm thinking, because the same actions won't get you there. So it's about looking for, other people who've already done what you've done, and they don't even have to be in the same industry, and looking at, well, what do they do, and modeling them. I'm big into coaches as well, because I believe that every business owner should have a coach. Every athlete has a coach. No athlete ever does not have a coach. And if you want to be high performance and you want to streamline your business journey to success, then you have a coach, because that coach should be able to guide you and advise you so you avoid making fatal mistakes, and also bounce ideas off and things. Like, my first coach that I ever got, Nathan McDonald, he actually taught me about break-evens. I had no clue about them. I'm like, why am I making no money? And he's like, because you're not even breaking even. And that's when I realized I wasn't charging enough. So for me, coaches have been crucial, not just with business strategy, but also with mindset as well. Like, I wouldn't have grown to where I am without my coaches. So I'm incredibly grateful for all of them that have helped me along the journey.
That's certainly music to my ears, given Grow a Small Business. We are business coaches, and we're certainly on the same page. It's so important that to help you navigate the challenge, to be a sounding board, and to help you avoid some of the pitfalls and save money and time and energy. So, no, good for you. So what's the number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
For me, I think it's consistency. Consistently doing things. Like, I find that a lot of small businesses, they're not doing things consistently from a marketing perspective or whatever it is. You need consistency. You need to be doing things. It's not very interesting doing the same things, but consistency builds patterns and habits. And the more you do something, the easier it becomes. And it's just showing up, just doing what needs to be done. I look at most service-based businesses, and can I be honest, if they actually just showed up and gave service, they'd be so successful. Yet most people don't do that. So it's just consistency in doing things. And I mean, that doesn't sound very, enlightening. But if you don't have that consistent effort, it's like baby steps. It's the long-term game. And so for me, like, it's even things like consistency of reading something every day and making myself better. By the end of the year, I will have read way more books than the average person. It's by consistently learning something new every day about skin, I will be way better by the end of the year than the average person. And so consistently having those patterns of improvement and learning, you by the end of the year will be completely different. As I say to my girls, cream rises to the top. It does not take much to be successful if you dedicate yourself to being excellent. And that's commitment and consistency.
Do you need a guide on how to build your own money printing marketing machine? Do you feel like marketing is a mysterious art, only cracked by a chosen few? Fear not, we get it. Mastering marketing can be like taming a dragon. Download a copy of the Marketing Funding Flywheel ebook, which has 41 pages packed with over 50 tools and tips for your business. Let's get into it. Head to growasmallbusiness.com. We have plenty of resources waiting for you in the footer of our website.
And doing the little things really well. And I think that's sometimes a challenge with business owners. They easily get distracted, forget about the little things that have made their business really good, or just so the consistency starts to lack. So that's good to hear. So you spoke about sort of one of your challenges is around the people. So can you just sort of tell us about how you've added people in the team, some wins, mistakes, and maybe some advice?
So when I probably the ones I've had the most challenge with is sales team, I'll be honest. And when I speak to other people in the industry, they tend to, particularly in the beauty industry, tend to be the ones that churn the most. I started I don't ask typical questions, because most people ask questions like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And it doesn't really mean anything. So I tend to ask them questions about their values, how they feel about things. I actually want to get to know them as a person, because their resume should tell me whether they're capable of doing the job. The other is more their personality and their attributes, and you can't change that. You can't change who they are. Are they driven? Are they motivated? Are they a self-starter? Those are the things I'm sort of looking at for in when I'm interviewing. There was a book that was recommended to me, and it was called, one of them was called Top Grading.
Yes.
And it's a brilliant book. And they talk about how every year they'd go through their team and they'd go, if I knew everything I knew about this person now, would I still want them on my team? And so it's a thing of excellence and only having the best people on there. So I started reading books like that on hiring, to improve my hiring process. But we also started personality profiling for some of the positions, because it gives you information on where their strong points are and when their weaknesses are. Even just little things like ads. If I want someone who's detailed, I'll tell them to do something, like give them a specific instruction. So email me with this heading. And if they don't email me with that heading, they don't have attention to detail. So there's just little things like that I've put in, and it culls the number of people you actually interview dramatically, because people don't follow instructions.
Yes.
And I always tell myself, even if it's only one person I'm interviewing, because I think we have this thing in our head that we have to interview 6. I don't care if it's one person I'm interviewing. I always say when I go into interviewing and hiring, I just need one. I just need one good person. So I would rather have one interview and that be the perfect person than 6 interview where they're not the right person.
Yeah. So quality versus quantity, eh?
Correct.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Some of those aspects are included in our business transformation program, which is our sort of our main program we run with business owners, and half of that is focused on people, for some of the reasons you just mentioned.
Yep.
So what are some things you'd recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with growth?
I definitely think culture starts at the top. And I'll be honest, we've had twice now in Roccoco a culture where the culture became quite toxic. And I'm like, when did this start? How did this happen? And I had to think back and go, where was this? So generally, it wasn't coming from me at that time. And what was ending up happening is we were having a culture of gossip amongst the women. And I thought, this is really bad. And so I pretty much, I actually brought everyone together and I just said, look, this is my policy on it. I have a 0 tolerance for gossip. And I probably sound really hard, but I said, if I hear you talking about someone else and it's not positive and it's derogatory or negative and it's got no bearing on their job and you're just gossiping to someone else, I said, you will get a written warning. And then I said, if I hear it again, I'm going to fire you. So I just made a 0 tolerance for it and it's gone. It's gone. I'm like, where did this start? I'm like, so I think that we often forget, whatever we accept, we will get. We're the one that sets the standard. And so I've just said there's a 0 tolerance for it. So no one gossips. I said, if you're talking about your work colleague and you're praising them, I'm all for that. But if you're talking about your work colleague and it's not good, then So I set that precedence from the beginning. Whenever I hire people too, we have our values and our missions on the wall. And I say to them, this is our culture here at Roccoco. Our culture is no one ever says, that's not my job. So I make it clear from the beginning, before I hire them, you will be expected to do things potentially that you may or may not say is within your job role. We have a culture here of teamwork, and everyone gets in together. So if we've got a crisis down in manufacturing, then I will go down and help, and everyone else will go down and help if it's a deadline and we really need to get something done. And everyone works like that because I've set that precedence from the beginning of that is our culture. We also have a culture of teamwork, excellence. And, I say to them, if you don't know how to do something, you need to ask. So it's about accountability as well.
Yeah.
So, but I think it really, like, for me, it's about getting that culture across in the actual interview process, because if they are not a fit for that, then you might as well know before you hire them.
Yeah. Well, it's all about setting the expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's one thing to set the expectations, but there's got to be consequences if they don't meet those expectations. And I guess that's all part of the conversations that go on after you hire them.
Yeah.
So that's great. So how have you handled balance in your life?
I will say I'm not balanced. So I had a good mentor say to me that there's like 7 areas of life and that you can never really only focus on 3 at a time. And so you can't have everything at once. There's a season for things to be. And I mean, I'm super passionate, as you already know. I'm definitely not balanced. I like, my work is almost like my life. I could say I'm married to my work. My husband would probably say that, but I'm just really lucky that I've got a partner that is accepting of who I am and how I am. So he gets to travel with me. My version of balance is I'm very good at reading my energy levels and when I need to stop.
Yep, good.
So I rarely ever get sick. Rarely.
That's good.
Yeah, I just don't. Like, I will have my staff drop with COVID or flus and everything, and I just never get sick. I may have spinal issues.
Yeah.
I have surgeries, but I never get sick. So, like, I'm very good at listening to my body going, okay, you've been pushing yourself too hard. You need to slow down now, and you need to basically, rest. You need to chill. You need to get off the computer. So I'm really good at knowing that.
Yes.
And my husband's really good at reading me as well.
Yeah, good.
You need to slow down.
Yeah. And I mean, what is balance? As you say, everyone's got a different definition. I think it's more the integration between business and your personal life that's really important.
Yeah.
And managing it, as you say. So that's good. So sounds like you've done a lot of professional development over the time. So how much have you invested in yourself?
Oh dear, probably about 300K in the last year in mentors. You're probably going to die.
Wow. I
really invest in myself. As far as personal development goes, like last year, I did Peter Sage's courses for stuff. I'm always learning something or reading. Like when I first started, I would read books because I couldn't afford a mentor at the time. And so I would read any books in personal development. And even now, my Kindle library is such that it's all personal development, business growth, scaling, marketing. I tend to read all of those things. And because for me, personal development is super important. It's not only just for myself, it's for me to be able to relate to other people and also to my team members, because everyone needs to be spoken and managed in a different way, because they're all different personalities. And what will work for one person isn't going to work for the next, because there are different personalities. So I've had to learn to adapt my message, and it's only through personal development and learning about different personalities and their style of what they are that I've been able to do that. Like we had one team member that she was acting quite differently, and because all my staff are personality profiled, I know what they are. And so I started looking at her personality profile and I went, she's stressed. And so I went up to her and said, what's going on at home? I said, you're not acting normal, you're stressed. And then I found out that her grandmother was really ill. Now, she hadn't told me, but it was only because I've been big into personal development that I could pick up there's something not right here. I had personality profile my team, and that I could go, that's why she's doing what she's doing. She's stressed. So to me, it's about compassion and understanding people as well. And I think too, the more you understand your team, the better you can actually get the best out of them. And they also then subsequently feel fulfilled in their job, because if they are not feeling like they're winning at work, then they're going to be looking for another job elsewhere, because everyone wants to feel like they're succeeding.
Do you do one-on-ones with your team?
Not at the moment, but I was just at an entrepreneurs thing yesterday, and one of the other business owners said he does that. Every week he checks in for 15 minutes. And I said, yeah, I think I need to start doing that.
Yeah, I think it's a good investment of your time. Even if it's 5 minutes, right? Just to, did you pick up on aspects that not necessarily business related, like they've got an issue in their family and yeah. So you've mentioned obviously you've had a lot of mentors and coaches along the way, and the value that you've experienced. Is there anything more you can sort of add for our listeners in around that?
I would just say, look, if you're thinking about coaching in any way, I would do it sooner than later. Like, honestly, everyone looks at things as an expense, and it's a mindset shift. It's not an expense, it's an investment. Because if you've got the right coach and mentor, they will totally turn around your business. And so, you know, instead of looking at it as it's, oh, I'm going to have to pay that and it's an expense, look at it and go, well, what happens if I don't get the right tools and the right advice? How much longer am I going to keep struggling with this? And how much longer is it going to take me to hit my goal? So, like, for me, I'm big on coaching and personal development, because it is the only reason my business is successful. I mean, I can have all the willpower and determination in the world, but if I'm putting all my energy and channeling it into the wrong areas, you're still going to fail. So, and I mean, business doesn't come with a rule book. You know, I've learned a lot of things on the way, and I've made a lot of mistakes. And thankfully, I've learned from my mistakes. You know, so when you're going on this journey, you are making mistakes, but the more you can have a mentor and a coach, the less mistakes you make. Because they'll be able to advise, and you'll be able to leverage their experience in business where they've already made those mistakes, and they can guide you.
Yeah, and I think that that word guiding is certainly what Grass Small Businesses is all about, and but also challenging when it's needed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So have you had a board of directors or advisors in the business so far?
The main people I've had has been my accountant, and obviously just the senior key members here within the team, but not technically a board of advisors.
So, Jacine, our final 5 questions. It's been a great chat. So what do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
I think the hardest thing in growing a small business is overcoming fear. It honestly is fear. We often won't make the decisions that we need to make because of fear. If we knew everything was going to go to plan, and if we knew we couldn't fail, we would do way more than what we do. But it's fear of, if I make that investment, what if it doesn't come off? If I hire that person, what if it doesn't happen? What if they don't get the sales in and I take that risk? So I honestly think fear is the hardest thing, and learning to navigate that and still work through it, because every big monumental leap I've had was preceded by an overwhelming urge to want to vomit with fear. Like, I'm just like, just do it. And even now, like, I mean, I've got some people who are starting a business, and I say to them, I still have fear prop up. And they're like, really? And I'm like, it never goes away. Like, you've just got to learn to surf the wave of it and realize it's just you taking a next big leap. And I actually think now that if I'm not scared slightly, I'm playing in my comfort zone. To me, feeling that little bit of fear goes, you're pushing outside your boundaries, you're pushing to the next level. So to me, I look at it as a good thing, because if I'm not feeling that, I know I'm playing small.
Yeah, no, good. I mean, you've reframed it in your own mind.
Yeah.
Which obviously helps that mindset. You mentioned E-Myth, which I think is one of the foundational books as a business owner. So what's your favourite business book? Which has helped you the most?
That's a really hard question, can I be honest? There's just so many of them, but probably my all-time favourite book would be Atomic Habits.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Just the whole thing of incremental, like habits just determine your success. Like my biggest number one habit is I never leave anything till tomorrow if I can do it today physically. So I will push myself to get things done, because tomorrow is going to have its next slot. And so whereas most people go, I'll do that tomorrow, I'll go, no, I'll do it now. And so for me, that's always been a habit of mine. And that's why I'm such a massive action taker, because I just tick things off and I get them done. And if I'm genuinely not getting something done, it's because literally I've reached the point of exhaustion where I go, I need to go to bed. But yeah, that would be the number one book, I think, for people to realize, because you don't realize how that incremental improvement changes things.
Yep.
And I always compare it to like the rudder of a boat. If you just change 1 degree every single day, the destination you're going to go to is completely different to you not changing anything.
Yep. Yeah, the compound effect is very powerful.
Yep.
So what about some great podcasts or online learning tools that you've used for your own professional development?
A podcast, I will confess, I'm not a big podcast listener. I tend to listen to books, but Alex Hormozi I listen to, and I also listen to The Red Life by Rudy Mauer as well. Rudy's actually one of my coaches, and there's also JT Fox, so he talks a little bit more about entrepreneurship and business as well. He's another entrepreneur. They're probably the three main ones that I sort of listen to. So they're not so much they're more about business and entrepreneurship and mindset, more so than business strategy. Yeah.
Yes. And of course, you'll now listen to Grow a Small Business podcast, eh?
Yes.
And what's one tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
It's probably not a software app, but I think there's value in getting around other business owners and networking.
Yeah.
Like I am always learning from other people when I meet them. And the thing I love about people in business is we often will share things we're doing, like new apps that are out, new websites, new software. I would never learn any of that stuff otherwise without people sometimes telling me about it. But yeah, I think just networking with other business, because I've found that a lot of my deals and stuff have come from networking. They haven't been from any other way. And building those relationships as well, and sometimes those relationships may take 2 years to build, but it's important, because I find a lot of that's where business is happening is because someone knows someone and they trust them, and then that connection will happen.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. And finally, your last question, what would you tell yourself on day one of starting out, what you know now?
Oh, if I told myself on day one, I would say to myself, learn marketing quickly and invest in mindset, because you're going to need it.
Yep, some great lessons there. And look, it's been a great chat, Jacine. I've loved it. You provide so much energy through your passion for what you do and why you do it. And I feel pumped just hearing your story and talking to you. So thanks again. And maybe we catch up in a year or two and hear about the next chapter of your journey, because I'm sure it's going to be exciting. And I'll certainly be watching and keeping abreast of it. So thanks again, and all the best.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Please leave a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. It means more small business owners will find our cast and help people with their business growth journey.